برای امین شایسته دوست هست. خوب فلور میدم. بفرمایید برای شایسته دوست سخنرانیتون انجام بدهید لطفاً. صدایتون نداریم. میکروفون را باز کنید لطفاً.
Thank you very much, Professor Charity, and thank you to you and Professor Dūdag-Sālār for providing us this good opportunity to share ongoing research about Iranian studies. Before beginning, I had a question from Professor Maqami, but I postponed it to the other time because in some case my research has overlapped with his finding about specifically Kadak-Wadai. But let me to present my PowerPoint. Do you have my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
I'm going to speak about Dūdag-Sālār is a legal term that's presented in the different Sasanian and post-Sasanian text, also as a Pahlavi loanword in Syriac, in the book of Juris Corpus of the Yeshubocht. As you know, understanding of some social phenomena is requires a thorough study of the historical context. In this regard, research on family structure in Sasanian period can help to perceive the trends and development and change in the Iranian society, institution, and system. Some scholars try to identify some Sasanian institutions and influence of them in this Islamic thought, specifically in Shia legal system. For example, Mario Matsukh and Herild try to trace back some Islamic institutions to their pre-Islamic roots. But about the Dūdag-Sālār, there is not a single work, but in different scholarly work in Pahlavi legal texts like Madian Hezar Dadestan, different scholars mentioned and speak about these terms, legal terms. But in previous work have a problem because they transport the later elements of Zoroastrian law to the Sasanian period. And as we know, the post-Sasanian texts were written in the time that Zoroastrians becomes a minority and they lose the support of the Sasanian imperial judiciary. And also in post-Sasanian times, Zoroastrians gradually lose their authority in different phase of in different phase, but it becomes reduced and limited to the family law. And as a matter of fact, the different legal perspective presented and projected in Madian Hezar Dadestan, and we can see a different legal perspective and some controversial matters about the defining and interpreting some specific legal terms. And the scholars try to put the information like a different part of puzzle to each other to reconstruct the one single picture. But as what I want to say, we cannot do that because when see, for example, one specific book like Madian Hezar Dadestan, we can see a different idea about one term and different interpretation. And as I try to see the differences, and by these differences to understand the social changes and the legal theory changes. And with the help of the Dūdag-Sālār, I try to show this kind of change in different phase of time. We have different primary resources regarding to the Dūdag-Sālār. The question of 55 and 57 of Dādastān Dīnīk, and also we have 94 cases that mention to the different features of the Dūdag-Sālār in Madian Hazar Dādastān, and also one chapter or one question from Rawayat Umid Ashavishtan, the fifth question dedicated to the function of Dūdag-Sālār, and also the book of for the chapter 9 of the Corpus Juris of Yeshua book dedicated to the Dūdag-Sālār. What is the Dūdag-Sālār? In Madian Hazar Dādastān, Kadek Khwada is a pater familias, is the father of the family, the head of the household. And when he passed out or died, he has two different successors. The one is Dūdag-Sālār and the other is Estor. In different situations, they choose this successor for the Kadek Khwada. But in Sasanian period, Kadek Khwada was a very well-known term, because then in some Zan text, in the rendering of the Nemana Paiti, they use Kadek Khwada instead of Manbed, as mentioned before by Maryam also. One of the successor of the Kadek Khwada after his death is Estor. When the Kadek Khwada has not a male offspring and direct and biological successor, they choose Estor. Estor is a substitute succession and subsidiary succession, or succession by proxy. And his function and duty was to enter into the Chagar marriage and begot a child, a son for the deceased Kadek Khwada. But the other, if the Kadek Khwada has a male spring and the son, but he's not mature, if he's in the minor age, they choose a Dūdag-Sālār, who is the guardian of the family, to becomes a supporter and guardian of the family. Dūdag-Sālār is a guardian over the woman and the minors within the family after death of the Kadek Khwada. But I want to draw your attention that Dūdag-Sālār is the term that dedicated specifically to the successor of the Kadek Khwada, not for the Kadek Khwada himself. And I think some scholars like Mazdapur and Kale have felt some confusion within the terms. As we have seen, Estor has also Kardag, Dūdag, and Gomardag. Dūdag-Sālār has also Kardag, Dūdag, Gomardag. But what is difference between these kind of Dūdag-Sālār? If paterfamilias himself, by his will, designate a guardians for his family, the Dūdag-Sālār is Dūdag-Sālār Kardag. If he has a mature son. He becomes a direct successor of the Dūdag-Sālār, and he is the Dūdag-Sālār Budak. And when the Dūdag-Sālār himself not designated the guardians of his family to someone, the church or the Zoroastrian priest finding someone is the nearest relatively and bloodly to the Dūdag-Sālār, and he becomes a Dūdag-Sālār of the family. But when we see a different evidence in Madian Azardadistan and also other post-Sasanian texts about the Gomardag, we can see some information that they contradict each other, and they have not one united idea about this one. In this study, I try to examine and compare the different legal perspectives regarding to the Dūdag-Sālār Gomardag, and furthermore compare them with this. I think it is very important to order this data chronologically and see these legal texts as a historical text, because when we see some contradiction, it seems at first they have it seems maybe they are simultaneous, maybe they two different jurisconsult have a different idea in one period of time, but it shows a different the changes in the legal thought, the changes in the social practical life. And that's why I ordered the different perspective as a different snapshot, because when put this different picture together, we can see the dynamics, the changes during the Sasanian time and the time after. In this text, we can see the people are not allowed to choose, for example, a Chagar son and Chagar daughter for the Estur or Dūdag-Sālār of the family. And of course, the Mubadan has authority to appointing a Dūdag-Sālār for the family. And also in the other text, Pad Esturihi Dūdakat Aburnayak andar Posi Chagar Negomaresh Che Aburnayaki Pad on Dūdag Paivanist. The Chagar son shall not be appointed for the authority over the family in which there are the minor change, because he is not related to the minor children belonging to that family. In the first step, we can see the priest and the Mubadan are not allowed to appointing Chagar children for the guardians of the family. But what is the Chagar children? We have three different marriage in Sasanian period. One is the Padishah, is the ordinary and traditional and traditional kind of marriage, and it has the woman in this kind of marriage has a full right in her marriage. The other is Chagar. for example, the Astur have to enter to the Chagar and begot a male offspring for the deceased man or the passed away Kadak Khwadai. This father has no legal relationship with his child. The child is the legally child of the Kadak Khwadai, not the child of the biological father. And in this text, this case tell us the Chagar father cannot adopt his son, the Chagar son, for as an adopted son. In other text, in the second snapshot, we can see مردک نوشت که پسی پدیریفتک سالار هیچ دودگی پید ای پدیریفتک به پدرهی اکسی ات استوریس از کوستی پید ای پدیریفتک اویش نرسد. In this text, we can see in the case there is lack of the offspring for the Kadak Khwadai. They can appointing the adopted or Chagar son as a adopted son and Dūdag-Sālār of the family. The third snapshot shows the other steps of social changes. پسی پادشاهی ها و پدیریفتک است. If somebody has two different sons, the legal son and the adopted son. In this case, if the adopted son is the older than his biological son, the adopted son becomes the ruler. And we can see in شایسته بس هند که منشن استور نگمارند کومان فرزندی چگر پد پسیح پدیریفت است. There are many who, with this idea that we have adopted a Chagar child as a son, they not appointing a Astur. And we can see it was very common in the period of time in Sasanian era that they accepting their Chagar son as an adopted son, and he can becomes a Dūdag-Sālār of his father if becomes mature legally. In the final snapshots, چاشت استد کو Dūdag-Sālāri بودگ این چهار ببید پس ای پادشاهی ها اد پدیریفتک اد استوری کردک اد برادی همبای. Let me show you this picture. The adopted son or the Chagar son as a Dūdag-Sālār. We can see in the final snapshots, it is the Dūdag-Sālār. It means it is the one by his himself become the Dūdag-Sālār, and he doesn't need to any priest approval to become a Dūdag-Sālār of the family. But in the 5 to 3rd snapshots, the Chagar son is the Gomardak. It means they require the approval of the Zoroastrian priest to become a Dūdag-Sālār. And I have to draw your attention to the something that Shaki, I think, in my opinion, truly pointed out. The scholars like Pagliaro and also Menash and Perikhanian, and also Maria Matsukh translating Budag as a natural, but as we see, the adopted son is not a natural successor, but in one evidence of the Madian Hezardadestani can becomes a Dūdag-Sālār Budag. And he believed these juridical terms nor current usage of isn't current usage express the legal import of the calling. In the post-Sasanian text, as we see, the Dūdag-Sālār Budag is just پسی تنیگزادی اوشیاری 15 سالک. But as we saw in the Madian Hezardadestan, the range of the Dūdag-Sālār Budag is very wide. The one is the Padishah son, the other is adopted son, and the other is the brother as a sharing in the inheritance with his brother. But and also in Dadestan Dini, Dūdag-Sālār Budag post, it means the natural son of the father just can becomes a Dūdag-Sālār Budag. But what does it means? What changes that makes to the adopted sons belonging to the Budag category, not to the Gomardag category. As we saw, the Dūdag-Sālār is not required to be approved by the Mubad, but the Gomardag Dūdag-Sālār have to appoint it with or by Mubads. We can see here a different legal perspective, and it shows the different stage of becoming or accepting an adopted son as a Dūdag-Sālār Budag. As we have said, the gradually adopted son is known as a lawful successor of the Kadak Khwadai over the family. This accepted over time or in some jurist minds, as they accepted the adopted son as a Dūdag-Sālār Dūdag guardians of the Budag guardians of the family. And the amount of the Budag guardians extended from Padishah son to the brother who share in the inheritance and also adopted son. And it shows that the sphere of the authority of the clergy in the appointing of the guardians become more limited. And the two different texts, I mean, Madian Hezardadestan and also the text of Yeshu Bokh, shows the authority of the clergy in appointing Dūdag-Sālār Gomardag over the family. By the fall of the Sasani, and the clergy regains their power of the appointing the family head. Response to the fifth questions in the Rawayat Umid Ashavaishtan shows the complex process of setting guardians by the priest. Actually, in the first, the priest lose their authority by demand of the society on the appointing guardianship over the family. But after the fall of the Sasanian Empire, the Zoroastrian community becomes the minority, and in some family, some members of the family change their religion. That's why some priests have to controls, have more controls over the family. That's why we can see in post-Sasanian text, the range of the Dūdag-Sālār Budag is the out of the control of the priest become more and more limited. But in the Sasanian period, during the time, they lose their authority over the appointing a guardianship. As a conclusion, I want to say data from the legal Pahlavi text in different periods do not give a single picture and the idea of some basic concept and legal terms. There were controversies and disagreements among the jurists in defining and interpreting of those concepts, which Farrokh Mardi Bahraman was trying to gather different views as a guidance for the lawyers. And the nature of the post-Sasanian text is actually different. The post-Sasanian texts have been adapted for ordinary audience, and there are the responses to the ordinary people daily needs. Although the term used in the riwayats as the same as the Sasanian legal term in nature, but the interpretation of the concept has fundamentally changed under the time needs. And also, disagreement among the jurists is the sign of change in the social and intellectual sphere. And in a final conclusion, taking into account all these differences can point to the trends of the social changes. Thank you so much for paying attention to my lecture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Şayesте Dost. Your lecture was, as always, very interesting. Are there any questions or considerations or comments on this paper? Please, Dr. Barbati, Professor Barbati, the floor is yours.
No, thanks. It's just a comment. I really enjoy your presentation. Think you are doing an extremely good research, and I very much like your methodological approach. I mean, this historical social terminology, if you want. But I think really you're doing an amazing work. It can really link what we're missing until now. So congratulations, and just looking for learning more from your research. Thank you very much. You made a really good point in underline the importance of contextualizing the historical and the social context when you analyze that, when we are dealing with such kind of text and such kind of research. Really, they're really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Barbati. Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments or? If not, allow me to thank once more Mr. Şayesте Dost